Howdy, this is PhantomStrider. Let's explore the world of Pokemon. At this point, Pokemon contains 150... Okay, 350... Okay, fine, 650... Oh, come on, how many are there now? 802 Pokemon and 1,030 episodes. So rather than attempting to talk about the monstrous, insurmountable Cthulhu that is the Pokemon anime, let's talk about the Pokemon movies. Sometimes these movies try and step up the quality of the anime. Generally. Though once again, we're delving into anime, and I'm simply not qualified to talk about these anime movies alone.
Did I hear someone say anime?
Ah, hey Robyn, good to see ya. We're talking about Pokemon movies today.
Ooh, Pokemon movies? I'm in.
Well, a few years back, my channel hosted Pokemon Month, where we reviewed some of the anime series and some of the movies, so I'm a bit of a Pokemon fan.
Me too. In fact, our generation grew up with these Pokemon movies, and we saw the very first Pokemon movie in cinema. And I actually found that some of them struck a deep emotional chord with me growing up.
Sometimes the Pokemon movies even hit on a powerful universal message, but other times the movies felt like shameless advertisements with cheap rehashed stories.
They certainly could be that too. So let's check out both in the top 3 best and worst Pokemon movies. And of course, keep in mind, these choices are very subjective. People are very split in general on what the worst and best Pokemon movies are, so take this list with a pinch of salt. Anyway, on to the countdown. The 3rd worst Pokemon movie is Genesect and the Legend Awakened. Here we are at the 17th Pokemon movie.
I am also a Pokemon who was created by people.
To start with, why do Ash and Mewtwo act like they've never met? I repeat, this is the 17th Pokemon movie.
I am Mewtwo.
Mewtwo?
They've literally met like 4 times at this point. Hell, Ash has lugged Mewtwo's dying body across an island to save his life. They should be like best buddies at this point. Hey Mewtwo, my main man, it's been ages.
Yo Ash, let me some skin, man.
How about we just ignore these Genesect and go see a movie?
Sounds like a plan. I'll text you when I'm in the food court.
On the subject of Mewtwo, his depth has been shrunk in this movie to basically an emo outcast.
I don't need your gratitude. I was only trying to save the Pokemon.
And for some reason he suddenly sounds like the Watch Mojo narrator?
I know precisely how they feel.
I'd say Mewtwo doesn't seem to like people very much.
No way! Really? Whatever gave you the impression that Mewtwo didn't like people very much? The part where he mass murdered an island's entire population? The part where he tried to flood the world and kill every living creature that wasn't a clone? The part where he isolated himself on an island indefinitely to be away from all mankind? Boy oh boy, these new characters have a deep, astute sense of deduction.
I know. Iris, Cylon, and Eric are just sad replacements for Misty and Brock in this movie. Let's just try and push through.
The movie is yet another of Ash's never-ending, meandering, legendary rehashes. With, of course, Team Rocket thrown in as nothing more than a side note. But this time the movie involves Genesect. Woo! Probably the best part of this movie is the animation is crisp and gorgeous. But frankly, with the over-bloated pockets of the Pokemon movies after the last 17 years, it should be. Another big problem is that Ash, Iris, and Cylon feel like they've just been shoehorned into the movie, serving no purpose other than just to be there because, well, they're the main characters.
And that's a recurring problem in many of the worst Pokemon movies. Ash and whoever is on his team are unnecessarily dragged in, serving no real purpose to the story.
Genesect and the Legend Awakened feels unnecessary. I found the Genesect a pretty boring plot device, and the entire thing feels like a dump on Mewtwo's character purely for the sake of advertising his new Mega Evolution.
Yeah, I'd recommend giving this Pokemon movie a skip.
And the 3rd best Pokemon movie is Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. Yeah, there's a sense of freshness and arcane majesty to this Pokemon movie. It's like the writers actually wanted to take the story seriously. It feels like all the Pokemon in this movie weren't contractually shoehorned in just to advertise something. They were actually there because they were relevant to the story being told.
Suppose you'd rather go back to your Toy-Bee pal than hang around here, wouldn't you?
And for those of you who know me, you know how much I hate seeing Team Rocket nowadays because it just feels like they're never gonna leave and there's just no point for them to be in the story. They're just pushed in because they're Team Rocket. But for this movie, it actually feels like they have a real purpose to the story.
Unlike many other Pokemon movies, they organically fit their own charming role in the movie. I actually found myself genuinely glad to see whenever Jesse, James, and Meowth popped in.
What's going on? Hey, it's Mew!
I agree. Jesse, James, and Meowth were a welcome sight in this one. Unlike Pokemon Forever, where everything's just set in one plain forest, the story's kept interesting by splitting between Mew, Team Rocket, Ash, and Lucario, all in their own different environments. And Ash really is at his best in this movie too. It took me back to the start of the series, back when he actually had personality.
I agree. In many of the later Pokemon movies, Ash is just a wide-eyed blank slate staring in wonder at everything he sees. But in Mystery of Mew, he actually gets mad, frustrated, and he feels grief. He feels a lot more like the Ash we knew from earlier seasons.
I liked the story, I liked the extra depth put into the characters, and I particularly like the beautiful landscape settings.
If I had one complaint about this movie, it's that it takes a good 40 minutes to get the story started, which to me is a bit on the long side.
You know, that was probably my main complaint too. The beginning of the movie particularly has a tendency to sandbag. But apart from that, Mystery of Mew is actually what I wish modern Pokemon was like. We have the fancy graphics and the fresh new Pokemon, yet there's still that strong narrative and the characters still have personality.
This was our final farewell to both our favorite Pokemon voice actors and much of those last vestiges of the original Pokemon's charm.
I'll miss you, buddy. I love you. Oh, wow! Whoa! So many Pokemon!
And the second worst Pokemon movie is Giratina and the Sky Warriors.
Well, from the get-go, at least we could say it's visually stunning.
In fact, I call this one of the prettiest Pokemon movies so far. We get introduced to the Reverse World by Giratina, and it's a real visual kaleidoscope spectacle to behold.
Yeah, and that's part of the tragedy, really. These modern Pokemon movies can look so beautiful, yet be such an exhausting tedium to watch. But the main problem here is a pretty big one. A big, spiky, irritating little snot of a problem.
Go this way! No, this way! Make up your mind!
Shaman, this movie's legendary, is a complete and utter brat. The Pokemon's not interesting, complex, hell, it's not even powerful. It's just a loathsome little twerp.
I would say you owe me a big thank you.
We're supposed to tell you that!
Ah, yes. Shaman.
Legend claims this to be the gratitude Pokemon. So why is this little green jerk so ungrateful and rude to Ash?
That sure doesn't sound like gratitude to me.
Even its whiny voice just pierces my head and makes me shudder. And this movie's villain, Zero, is among the most generic snore villains Pokemon's ever come up with. While I thought Vicious from Pokemon Forever was the most predictable Pokemon villain, this guy's possibly even sillier.
That's the entrance into the reverse world. At last.
I can't even work out his motivation. Does he have any? I give him a 0 out of 10 for originality.
Strider, that pun should be buried and never seen again.
Yes, sorry. But my point is that these new characters have all the warmth and charm of a Death Adder Python. It's an Aussie snake, it almost killed me once. And it's a shame because I like the concept of the reverse world they introduce. A bizarre, creative, dark dimension where Giratina can grab his prey and drag them away to devour them. And Giratina himself is definitely among the most truly threatening, terrifying legendaries of all. Giratina and the Sky Warriors gets an A for concept, but a solid D for execution. And the second best Pokemon movie is Pokemon I Choose You. Hey Robyn, do you remember seeing the first Pokemon episode now 20 years ago, when Ash first set off with Pikachu from Pallet Town?
I sure do. And it was pretty nostalgic to see the episode that started it all remade into a movie.
Yeah, it really was. I Choose You is a feature-length, beautifully rendered reimagining of Ash's beginning in Pokemon. In fact, in some ways, I prefer this version to the original. I mean, I still can't get used to Ash's new voice actor no matter how hard I try, but this version cuts out a lot of the cheesy padding from the original, and instead focuses on capturing the wonder and atmosphere many of us first felt when we were introduced to the world of Pokemon, retracing many of the original's old steps.
Pikachu, you've got to get inside your Pokeball now!
What's nice is it really works hard to tell its own story too. I Choose You focuses around Ash and Pikachu searching for the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh, or as we knew it 20 years ago, the Rainbow Bird.
This time, there's a much stronger sense of momentum to Ash and Pikachu's journey. But it still feels well-paced enough to not feel rushed. And needless to say, 20 years later, the scenery and animation is gorgeously rebuilt. Hey Robyn, did you have any personal nitpicks for this one?
Well, one nitpick I had was the ending felt a bit silly and overly abstract. Without giving away any spoilers, it makes the tier revival look realistic by comparison.
Yeah, the ending is probably the cheesiest Pokemon movie ending I've ever seen, and that's against some stiff competition. I mean, you've really got to have cheese tolerance to accept this ending. But frankly, this is Pokemon, and we've come to accept these absurd, ridiculous moments that make no sense. And I actually found myself liking Ash's two human companions, Verity and Sorrel, more than the majority of friends he's had along, since Misty and Brock anyway.
If you didn't grow up with Pokemon's first episode, you may not quite get the nostalgic rush Strider and I got, but it's still a very graceful and solid reimagining of Ash's search for Ho-Oh.
But I Choose You does set a very high standard for Pokemon movies, a standard I hope they intend to sustain. And I think you and I can agree, the #1 worst Pokemon movie is Hooper and the Clash of the Ages.
Oh, thank Arceus, thank you!
Even by Pokemon's poorly translated standards, this plot is confusing, and so many of the voices grate on my ears.
I mean, look at this, the cover looks epic. Too bad it was an epic failure.
The whole thing just feels like a long filler movie, and none of the supporting characters or Pokemon we meet are ever seen again. As usual, rather than displaying any personal growth, character, or learning, Modern Ash just basically acts as a sponge of wonder and surprise to showcase all the new sights he sees. This time he's fascinated by a boring, annoying, but legendary Hoop Pokemon. You know, Hoopa.
And once again, Ash takes the typical Chosen One shtick, even though he feels completely shoehorned in the movie. In fact, Ash is literally dragged into the story by one of Hoopa's hoops.
On top of that, it feels like the movie was sponsored by Krispy Kreme or something, as everyone has this weird donut obsession. Why? Because Hooper's made of hoops, I guess? And hoops kind of look like donuts? This is a really dumb idea.
And boy, is the story just messy.
Hoopa's hoops are repeatedly used to drag in unrelated Pokemon or people into the movie. Rather than hoops, they feel more like plot holes that Ash and the others are repeatedly jumping through, leaving the viewers confused of what's actually meant to be happening in the story. We do get other legendaries showing up for cameos, but they're just hooped in for what feels like a weak attempt to advertise new Pokemon merchandise. They don't feel like they're given any real backstory or reason to exist in the movies, other than to say, "Buy me," before disappearing.
And on the subject of the legendaries of this movie, Hooper is a stupid legendary. I'm sorry, he just is. We've got grand, time and space-defying monsters like Palkia, Dialga, Lugia, freaking Arceus. And for the 18th Pokemon movie, we have Hooper. He likes hoops.
Even the ending feels like a weak Deus Ex Machina conclusion. Arceus, also known as the Poke God, just shows up and makes everything better again.
All so Hooper can finally jump through his own hoops, which apparently he needed the power of friendship and Pokegod to do? Pokemon Clash of Ages is the prime example of the writers not even bothering to try anymore. Hooper's annoying, the story's flimsy, the voice acting's grating, and as Robyn said, Ash is literally dragged into the movie. What do you think, Robyn? Have we found the worst Pokemon movie ever?
Strider, I have to agree with you. Pokemon Clash of Ages just has to be, without a doubt, the worst Pokemon movie I have ever seen in ages. Yeah, I know, that was bad.
And before we get to #1, just a couple of quick honorable mentions. Pokemon 2000. I saw this one in theaters as a kid, and I've got to admit, it looked pretty astounding on the big screen. Lugia in particular really had that sense of wonder to him. It was viscerally thrilling. but for me, it just didn't leave quite the impact some of the other Pokemon movies did.
The downside to me was the character's motivation seemed weaker in this one, particularly with the villain, Lawrence. But the soundtrack is actually among the best I've heard in all of the Pokemon movies. In fact, The Power of One remains my all-time favorite score in anime.
Jeebus, Robyn, that's high praise. Pokemon 3 the movie, Spell of the Unknown. Despite the Unknown being the most boring protagonists ever, at least Ash, Brock and Misty still have their old resonating characters in this movie. I do still think the Unknown are the stupidest Pokemon ever, but fortunately the humans really help redeem this movie. And the #1 best Pokemon movie is...
Life is wonderful. But why?
In no other case have I ever felt such a sense of ethereal ambience to a Pokemon movie. A sense of mystery and even a feeling of horror against the insurmountable power and hatred of Mewtwo.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon. And we succeeded.
There is certainly a strong sense of heaviness and scope to this movie. For the first time, humanity is facing a desperate situation unlike any other, and it's up to Ash, Misty, and Brock to save the world alone.
Child's play.
Is that a challenge?
You bet it is!
Exactly. Unlike future movies, there's no super legendary to aid them the same way this time. Mew puts up a bit of a fight, but he's not the focus. They feel severely outmatched and completely out of their league the whole way. It feels hopeless.
Do not attempt to defy me.
Adding to that real sense of dread and suspense. There's also a sense of brutality to this Pokemon movie that I simply haven't felt in other ones. But a big part of what made this movie so powerful was Mewtwo himself. He is probably the most interesting, memorable, and complex Pokemon character I've ever seen in Pokemon. Unlike almost every other Pokemon movie I've seen, Mewtwo actually feels sentient, multi-layered, and interesting. There's a real psychology behind him.
Mewtwo felt legitimately threatening, and it felt like nothing could break through his hatred for all of humankind.
And there's a real eeriness and mystery to Mewtwo's lair. The entire place looks like something out of a gothic nightmare. My main complaint for this movie has always been the same. I always find the fact that Pokemon are fighting, but shouldn't be fighting this way, a really confusing message. I mean, isn't Pikachu just using double slap on the other Pikachu here?
Well, however you see it, the fighting still makes for a powerful drama, and the message of this movie is among the most powerful, memorable messages I've seen in all of anime.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
This whole movie gives us a resonating, timeless message. It's what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are. It's about not accepting circumstances as excuses for who we are. We don't need to lower our standards because life is tough. Be someone who can rise up from the ashes and stand on your own.
Exactly. Seeing Mewtwo put aside his hate-filled, horrifying past in order to see what the world can truly be with positive action, it's just one of the most beautiful, memorable moments in all of anime. And to finish with, I'd also like to share with you my own personal favourite quote from my other favourite Pokemon movie, Mewtwo Returns. For some reason, this moment has just stuck with me for nearly 20 years. I can't even fully explain why it's so beautiful, I just love this scene.
Why are you helping me?
Well, for one thing, you saved my Pikachu. That's a good reason.
The only one?
Do you always need a reason to help somebody?
Perhaps you are unique. A unique human. One of a kind.
You're one of a kind, too. Everybody is.
I do not know what I am.
While a lot of these Pokemon movies can be cheesy and transparently marketable, I think it's important to acknowledge the positives of a franchise that has affected so many people over the years. And when they did strike a chord, they really did affect me deeply. Because regardless of what we think of the franchise, Pokemon is still going to be there, and it's going to keep affecting both kids and adults for a long time yet. And personally, I think Pokemon still does a lot more good than harm. Hey, thanks a lot for your perspective on these movies, Robyn. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey, anytime, Strider. Anime is a huge part of my life, and it is my passion, and a part of that passion is Pokemon. It's been with me ever since I was a kid, and I've loved it ever since, so it was a great excuse to look back on all of these movies.
And feel free to leave your own favourite Pokemon movies or least favourites in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. So Robyn, did you have any favourite Pokemon or a favourite Pokemon type?
I tend to go towards fire types, and my favorite Pokemon is Flareon, mainly because of what it took for me to get the Flareon holographic card when I was a kid. So because of those memories, I cherish Flareon the most. What's your favorite, Strider?
I personally have always liked Psychic and Ghost Pokemon particularly. I used to use Gengar, Misdreavus, Manaphy, and Crobat myself.